From ancient times to the present, family affection has always been highly valued in East Asian societies. Siblings in the family must love and support each other is something that previous generations always taught the next. Therefore, conflicts and disputes between family members are considered taboo. However, every society has its dark side, and every family has hidden corners. The case below is considered a typical example of the failure of child rearing according to Eastern views. Please follow along and leave your comments below. On June 22, 2023, the police station in Linchuan Town, Fuzhou City, Jiangxi Province, received a report from a local resident. According to the information provided, police quickly arrived at the scene in Linchuan Town. The scene was chaotic, with many curious onlookers already present before the police arrived. Even before entering the house, the heart-rending cries of a woman could be heard from afar. The police quickly moved in, cordoning off the area and instructing the public to stay away from the crime scene. On the grass in front of the house lay the lifeless body of a man, covered in blood. Next to the body was an elderly woman in a red shirt, crying while holding the man. From their appearance, it was easy to guess that they were mother and son. The police struggled to control the mother's emotions, and the curiosity of the villagers added to the tense atmosphere. According to a resident present, the victim was the elderly woman's eldest son, Zhou Fu, 51 years old. That morning, the resident heard the woman screaming while passing by. He rushed over and saw the scene unfold before him. Shockingly, the person who had attacked Zhou Fu was none other than his younger brother, Zhou Gui, aged 48. The man continued, "When I arrived, the victim was already lying there, and Zhou Gui had run straight out of the house. His hands were stained with a little blood, as if he had hurriedly washed them. I tried to ask what happened, but he remained silent and ran away." A neighbor living next to Zhou Fu's house added, "I was at home when I heard loud noises outside. When I rushed out, I saw Zhou Gui sitting on Fu and repeatedly stabbing him with a knife. Mrs. Zhou was crying and constantly begging beside them. I rushed inside to grab my phone to call the police, but by then, other neighbors had already arrived. The scene was terrifying. Why would Zhou Gui kill his own brother? Was there some sort of conflict between the two? All questions pointed towards the victim's family. Since Mrs. Zhou was too distraught, police could not get information from her. They turned to Fu's wife, Ha, who was also present. The police asked Ha about what happened that morning. Ha hesitated, silent for a moment, and then stuttered, "I..." The police asked firmly once more. After a few moments of silence, Ha looked up, tears streaming down her face, and apologized before detailing what had happened. It turned out that the incident was not just a petty argument, but stemmed from a romantic affair between Zhou Gui and his sister-in-law, Fu's wife. Understanding the situation, the police split into two teams. One team stayed to investigate the scene, while the other returned to headquarters and issued an arrest warrant for Zhou Gui. The police scoured the entire town of Linchuan, but surprisingly, they could not locate him. Given the time frame, he had only left the scene less than an hour before the police arrived. It seemed he was neither afraid nor planning to turn himself in. The police eventually announced a reward of up to 50,000 yuan, any information leading to Zhou Gui's capture. Zhou Gui, 48 years old, is about 1.60 meter tall, plump, with dark skin, long hair, a round face, and missing teeth. On the day of his escape, he was wearing black pants and blue sneakers. These details became crucial leads in the police pursuit. At the crime scene, the victim's body was still warm, with multiple wounds on his chest inflicted by a butcher's knife. The knife had been discarded at the scene. Inside the victim's house, some belongings were disordered, likely due to an initial struggle. In the bathroom, the police found a blood-stained set of clothes and traces of blood on the wall, where the killer had attempted to wash. Despite being related by blood, why would brothers go to such lengths over a woman? The wounds were severe and numerous, resembling an act of vengeance. Zhou Fu's wife, was 7 years younger than her husband. A's family were farmers, not wealthy but dedicated to educating their children well. As the eldest of 4 siblings, Ha had been responsible and self-reliant from a young age. At 15, she began working various jobs, from factory work to helping out at eateries, seemingly having done every kind of manual labor. Ha was diligent and gentle, and as she grew up, she became quite attractive, catching the eye of many young men in her village, though she showed no interest. At 21, Ha met and fell in love with a colleague. However, this man turned out to be unfaithful, not only betraying her trust but also taking much of her saving. After this shock, Ha lost faith in men and love, devoting herself solely to work. When she reached marriageable age, her parents, worried about their daughter, arranged for her to meet potential suitors. A matchmaker once introduced Ha to Fu. During their first meeting, Ha ran away without saying a word. A few days later, fate brought them together again when Ha visited a restaurant near where Fu worked. This chance encounter intrigued Zhou Fu, and after several meetings, they developed feelings for each other and decided to marry. As for Zhou Gui and Zhou Fu, 2 brothers were 3 years apart in age and had very different personalities from a young age. While Zhou Fu was kind and quiet, Zhou Gui was irritable and narrow-minded. Their parents, farmers, were good-hearted and, despite traditional rural values favoring sons over daughters, did not spoil their boys, believing in a strict upbringing through discipline. This method worked on Zhou Fu, who learned to control himself. But with Zhou Gui, it was different. He was indifferent and chose his own path. As the 2 grew up, the differences became more obvious. The family was not rich. Parents could not afford to pay for both children, though they reluctantly let Zhou Fu drop out of school, creating conditions for Zhou Gui to go to school. The older brother understood. Although he did not want to leave school, he thought about the burden on his parents and his responsibility as the eldest brother. Therefore, he could only agree to his parents' arrangement. The younger brother did not feel anything. He seemed to not recognize his parents' good intentions. Although he was given good conditions to study, he did not know how to appreciate it. In the end, because his studies were getting worse and worse, it made him even more bored with studying. At that time, Zhou Fu worked in town. His honest and responsible personality made him favored by his boss, and his income was also quite high. After the younger brother Zhou Gui saw that his older brother could earn money by dropping out of school, he immediately felt a huge gap. In short, he also wanted to quit his boring studies, earn money like his brother. Due to his stubbornness, his parents had no choice but to let him quit school. However, in order to avoid trouble for his second son, the father entrusted his second son to his older brother to take care of, hoping that the brothers would protect each other and work together. However, the happy times did not last long. Zhou Gui was completely unable to adapt to the hard manual labor. After only a few days of working, he left the stall, not caring about his brother's reputation. Fortunately, the boss was very fond of his brother's personality and ability, so he let him go. His parents were very angry with their second son's behavior and threatened to stop caring about him, leaving everything to him to take care of himself. As time passed, Zhou Fu's older brother's income increased year by year. Thanks to his hardworking and capable personality, he also used his income for several years to renovate the family house. Therefore, when he reached the age of marriage, countless people came to matchmake for him, making his reputation spread throughout the villages. Everyone wanted to marry their daughter to Zhou Fu. Zhou Fu went through many blind dates, but he never met someone he liked. Although his parents saw it in his eyes and were very worried in their hearts, they were not the old feudal people who parents arrange where children sit. The 2 completely let their eldest son decide for himself. They supported their eldest son to find someone he really liked. Soon after, Zhou Fu fell in love with a woman named Ha, and then they also considered getting married. His parents helped him choose a good day, and finally, the day Fu and Ha officially became a happy couple was approaching. But what was supposed to be the happiest day of the family was a plot twist that made his parents and Zhou Gui a laughingstock in front of the villagers. Before that, his parents had told Zhou Gui about his brother's wedding and hoped that he could return to attend. At that time, he refused and said that he would not return until he became a better person than his brother. However, unexpectedly, on that day, he appeared. His parents were overjoyed. After all, they were biological brothers, and it was a good thing that a younger brother still remembered his older brother. However, no one could have expected that after a full meal, Zhou Gui would become drunk. He said that his parents were biased, only wanting to marry off their eldest son, but were indifferent to him. He even said nonsense that he did not mind sharing his sister-in-law with his eldest brother. As soon as he finished speaking, his father slapped him in the face and scolded him to go out. "Don't talk about embarrassing things here. Today is your big brother's happy day anyway. Go out quickly." Hearing his younger brother's drunken words, even his always kind older brother showed resentment. It was his father's slap that made Zhou Gui hate his father even more. Even after his father died of illness, he did not return to attend the funeral. After this time, he really ran away from home and cut off contact with his family. However, every mother still felt sorry for him. Zhou Gui's mother, Mrs. Zhu, kept calling Gui and hoping that he would come back home to live with her. Finally, after many times of begging from his mother, and because he had been wandering outside for many years without making any money, he agreed to return home. On this return, also wished to start his own family. After his father passed away, his mother lived with his eldest brother. Old house was in disrepair. When the older brother saw his younger brother coming back, he still enthusiastically let his younger brother come back to live. He thought that the past was all in the past. As long as he looked to the future, they would have a happy life together. But he did not expect that just to satisfy his personal feelings, Zhou Gui had destroyed the life that his mother had always dreamed of. When he returned home, Zhou Gui refused to ask for a job or help his family. He hung around the yard all day, sometimes wandering around the village and then coming back. Many villagers even said that he was a parasite on his older brother, which made him very uncomfortable. However, that could not change Gui's lazy nature. When Zhou Gui saw his brother having a family and a job, he was very jealous. He also wanted a wife. But a vagabond who refused to work all day, what woman would dare to agree to marry him? He returned home and sat in the yard, then looked around and suddenly saw his sister-in-law hanging clothes. Thinking back, he suddenly had a bad thought. He approached and started a conversation with his sister-in-law and helped her hang the clothes. Ha did not think much and agreed to let her brother-in-law help. From then on, Zhou Gui became closer and closer and helped his sister-in-law more. Seeing this, his brother and mother only thought that Gui had finally changed his personality and was willing to worry about the family. One evening, right after dinner, because of work, his brother had to go out for a while. As for his mother, she was old, her hearing and eyesight were both poor. She could only go into her room to rest after eating. Outside, Zhou Gui also went to help his sister-in-law clean up. Then he sat alone in the living room watching TV. At this time, he suddenly wanted to get some things from the kitchen. So he stood up and went downstairs. Unexpectedly, he saw a very surprising scene. The bathroom door was only half closed. So when he looked through the gap, he saw his sister-in-law bathing. This made him crave his sister-in-law's body even more. The next day, he started to find every way to be with his sister-in-law. Because his brother went out to work every day and didn't come back until evening, and his mother was old and had poor eyesight, these things created opportunities for him to approach and become closer to Ha. Zhou Gui often bragged in front of his sister-in-law, telling her what he had heard and seen outside over the years. For someone who stayed home all day taking care of her husband and knew little about the outside world, these things made Ha feel very interested. As time passed, the two gradually developed feelings that went beyond the sister-in-law relationship, beyond moral and ethical constraints. The two began to secretly love each other. When the brother and mother went out, two would get close to each other. Even when Mrs. Zhu was at home many times, the two would tease each other as if no one was home. Just like that, from the secret love affair, Zhou Gui gradually expressed his feelings more openly. Even in front of his mother and brother, many times without paying attention, he had gestures and words that went beyond the norm. No matter how stupid Fu was, such gestures still caught his attention and gave rise to suspicion. Zhou Fu once asked his wife about the attitude of his wife and younger brother, but Ha just thought that her husband was overthinking it. She said that the two of them just met each other more often, so they became closer. And Ha also considered her husband's younger brother as her own younger brother. There was nothing between the two. Hearing this, Fu could only let it go, but he was still full of doubts. The next day, which was also Zhou Fu's day off, he decided to take his wife out to rekindle their relationship. When he first proposed the idea, his wife stammered in protest. His younger brother, Zhou Gui, was annoyed. "Why go? Just stay home and rest. Traveling far will only tire you out." The old mother also agreed, saying that it had been a long time since her eldest son had a day off, and it was only one day, so she hoped that her son would take care of his health first. Seeing this, his wife also added that when her husband had more days off, the whole family would go together. Hearing this, Zhou Fu finally had no choice but to listen. It had been a long time since he had a day off, so Fu decided to take another nap. At around 11 a.m., Fu heard laughter in the kitchen. Listening carefully, it was the voice of his wife and younger brother. He stood up and walked down to the kitchen, where he saw the two of them playing around. The younger brother even made some movements to touch his wife. Ha was laughing when she suddenly realized that her husband had woken up and pushed Gui's hand away. She said that Gui was helping her prepare lunch, and Gui was just supporting her. Although she was very suspicious, because she did not have enough evidence, Fu could only remain silent and show her disapproval of their action. Lunch that day was filled with silence. Ha realized that the situation was not good, so she spoke first. Fu remained silent. After the meal, the couple argued, but Ha still insisted that nothing had happened between her and Gui. Knowing that without evidence, Ha would never admit it and that she would be branded as a blindly jealous man, Zhou Fu had no choice but to remain silent and ignore it. Knowing that her husband was suspicious of her, from that day on, Ha deliberately kept her distance from Gui. But this only lasted for a while. After her husband did not ask anything, Ha and Gui continued their flirtatious affair. How can this evil thing be hidden forever? On the day of the incident, Zhou Fu pretended to go out to work and then hid outside the house. 10 minutes later, he returned to check and discovered an unbelievable scene. His wife and younger brother were making love in the bedroom. Zhou Gui didn't even bother to close the door. Two were cuddling and talking sweetly, leaving Zhou Fu speechless. He angrily kicked the door open and went inside. Only then did Ha suddenly escape from Gui's embrace and retreat to the corner of the bed. Fu angrily punched his younger brother in the face. Not willing to be outdone, Zhou Gui fought back. The sound of the two fighting woke up the old mother in the next room. She ran over and saw her two sons fighting, so she quickly stepped forward to stop them. However, the two brothers were beaten until their eyes were red, but they did not pay attention to their mother's pleas. They fought from inside the house to outside. At this time, when his brother was not paying attention, Zhou Gui caught a glimpse of a knife used to cut pork in the yard. He picked it up and stabbed his brother. He stabbed continuously without stopping until his brother fell to the ground. The old mother then stepped out and saw her eldest son lying on the ground soaked in blood. She cried out in pain. There was nothing more painful than a white-haired man sending off a young-haired man, and the murderer was also her own son. The old mother's cries did not move Zhou Gui. Calmly threw the knife down, even went back inside to change his clothes, wrapped himself tightly, and quickly walked out of the house. The neighbors heard Zhou Gui's mother's screams and ran over to discover the incident. They immediately called the police. However, Zhou Gui had already fled, so the police issued a wanted notice. At 7 p.m. that same day, Linchuan police received a report that Zhou Gui had been found at a restaurant in Linchuan Town, a suburb of Fuzhou City. Police immediately deployed a search team to the location. However, unfortunately, Zhou Gui had already left. He calmly walked into the restaurant and ordered a bowl of noodles. At that time, the restaurant owner did not recognize him because he had been busy all day and did not have time to update the news. The restaurant owner said to the police, "What happened next?" A police officer asked. The restaurant owner pointed to his daughter and said, "My daughter was inside carrying noodles. Then she came back and told me that the customer outside was a wanted person. So I asked her to call you guys." Police immediately retrieved the camera at the restaurant and discovered that Zhou Gui was indeed eating calmly, not like a new murderer at all. The police believed that Zhou Gui was still in Linchuan Town. They organized patrols everywhere. Indeed, as the police had speculated, in the early morning of June 23rd, Zhou Gui was arrested in Jiangxi Village, Linchuan Town, on the outskirts of Fuzhou City. The police quickly opened an investigation to solve this case as soon as possible. Up to now, the court has not yet given a final verdict for the murderer, because it has to consider many factors, including the elderly mother of the two people, the victim and the murderer who needed care. After her husband passed away and her lover, who was also her husband's younger brother, was arrested, Ha could only live alone and take care of her mother-in-law. However, she was the source of everything, so Mrs. Zhu hated her very much. Later, Ha also became more quiet. She rarely went out to avoid gossip from the neighbors. Even her biological parents did not expect that their daughter was such a person. The family that was originally a happy and warm family of 4 was now destroyed because of an immoral incident. She killed her husband. She was truly a flirtatious woman. The Chu family was truly unlucky to have her as their daughter-in-law. Thousands of criticisms from public opinion made Ha more and more silent. The once beautiful and lively daughter-in-law was now strangely old and taciturn. As for Mrs. Zhu, mother of the victim and also the mother of the perpetrator, after the incident, she was so shocked that she fell ill and was bedridden. She could not accept that her second son killed her eldest son because of her daughter-in-law, and even more so, she could not accept that she would lose 2 sons at the same time. Although she was so sick that she could not walk, Mrs. Ma Zhu kept in touch with the judge and cried, hoping that her second son's sentence could be reduced. No one at that time could understand the heartbreaking pain of a mother. At Zhou Fu's funeral, not only relatives but also strangers who knew about the incident came to see him off on his final journey. During the funeral, someone said that Ha kept his head down, did not dare to look at anyone, and did not say anything. Next to Fu's coffin, the sick and haggard old mother could only kneel beside her son's coffin, crying but had no more tears left. Her eyes were swollen, and she could no longer see the people around her clearly. That day was truly tragic. Regarding Zhou Gui, the perpetrator in the case was a person with fluctuating behavior and psychology, very complicated. To better understand the psychology of the perpetrator, we can focus on the following aspect. First is personality and control. Zhou Gui showed that he had an irritable and narrow-minded personality since childhood. The difference between him and his brother Zhou Fu created a sense of rivalry, jealousy, and a thirst for attention from the family. This personality, combined with the lack of emotional control and low self-esteem, can form the foundation for irrational and unstable actions later on. Second is failure and jealousy. Although he is the younger brother, Gui has experienced many failures in life, especially in his studies and career. His brother's success and stability have created a strong pressure and jealousy in Gui's mind. This can cause him to lose control and lead to unforeseen action. Third, the main reason for this undesirable outcome is the lack of love between a man and a woman. The relationship between Zhou Gui and his sister-in-law, Ha, is a prominent aspect of the criminal's complex psychology. Loneliness, jealousy, and the need to seek attention may have led to this relationship, causing him to lose his ability to judge correctly and control himself. The act of stabbing his brother to death is a clear manifestation of Zhou Gui's criminal psychology. Failure, jealousy, and an unhealthy relationship have brought him to the brink of criminal behavior. This action is not only a protest against family pressure, but also shows desperation and destruction. After committing the crime, Zhou Gui chose to run away instead of facing the consequence. This action may be the result of mental restlessness and avoidance of responsibility. Not returning to attend his brother's funeral and not caring about his family are clear signs of Gui's isolation and irresponsibility in this situation. Zhou Gui's psychology reflects a complex combination of psychological factors and social environment. His perception of himself, his relationships, and social pressure played an important role in pushing him to the edge of criminal behavior. This case is truly a family tragedy, isn't it? The fault lies not only with the younger brother, but also with the sister-in-law. Whether it is serious or not, it is her soft-heartedness that led to such a pitiful incident. Hopefully this case will be a lesson for us. Always cherish, love, and protect each other in life. Today's case has ended. Thank you for watching the whole video. How do you feel about today's murderer? Don't forget to leave a comment below to let us know. Goodbye, and see you again in the next videos on our video channel, Unmasked.